Okay, welcome everyone to this social media webinar for UN Trust Fund grantees, which is a first, and it's my pleasure to be here with you today. Or if you're watching the recorded version, then welcome as well. So first of all, what is social media? Why are we talking about it? Well, social media are web platforms, applications that allow people to share information, engage and communicate, or participate in social networking. So can be very broad. Social media really has changed the hierarchy of information sharing. So it changed from central authorities that pushed out information to really sort of an anarchy of user-generated content and everybody being able to be citizen journalists and contribute to information sharing. Why do we use social media for organizations, or why do we recommend you to use it? Well, it's really to reach a different and new audience. What will we cover today? First, I will give you an overview of UN Women's use of social media, just as an example of a bigger organization. Not everything might be relevant to you, but hopefully some of it will give you some inspiration and just some examples. Then some best practices on how you can use social media for your organization. Then we've also taken a look at some of your social media accounts and want to highlight some really good practices there that might be relevant for others. And lastly, how to use social media better for fundraising. Now, throughout this webinar, please make sure you are on mute. I've muted you on entry, but please don't unmute yourself. And we will go for almost an hour, and then we'll have about 25 minutes left for Q&A at the end. So if you don't mind holding your questions till the end, that would be great. So an overview of UN Women's use of social media. We use social media mainly with three purposes in mind. One, as an additional channel of information to push out our content. Two, for engagement. And three, for advocacy. So I'm going to give you a few examples for each of those. Social media as an additional channel of information. So in addition to traditional media, we want to go where the people are, because most of our content is on our website, which is our content hub, but not everyone comes to our website on a daily basis. So we have to go where our audience is, and that is on all those different social media channels, and that's where we push out information. What do we post? A variety of content. News content, travels of the executive director to tell our audience what she's doing, what she's up to. But really, mostly we try to tell stories through images. Images are really the most efficient way to get your message and your story across. So we always try to be as visual as possible. Images, but also videos. And here you can see what difference it makes when you have almost two identical tweets, but one of them has a visual attached to it, and how much bigger the impact can be of that message. So we always try to show instead of just tell. We also have a lot of great infographics that are quite complex and too complex for social media, but for social media, we then break them down into additional individual assets. And they are much more digestible this way when they're posted in a more simple visualization and with less text and broken down into individual assets. We've also started to produce a lot of GIFs to get our message across. This is a very simple example of a GIF that we produced for an international day, just with some key statistics and a key message. One concrete example of how we use social media to push out our content is for big reports. And I thought because some of you publish reports, it might be relevant for you as well. So our flagship report from UN Women is called Progress of the World's Women, which is a very dense and thick report that, not everyone in the general public will read in its entirety. So what we would do is we extract facts from the report for simple visual presentation. Again, in those graphs, factor graphs, to get individual facts across to our audience. We do the same with key messages from the report. So we extract key messages and then overlay them on images. And the images, they're not necessarily related to the report, but they could be generic images that we have the rights to use that get, that fit thematically and that visualize the key message in a nice way. We also started to transform our content for even different social media platforms such as Snapchat and Instagram stories. And for that, we have two different ways of using Instagram stories and Snapchat. One is when we're actually live at an event and we're grabbing content there live. And the second one is when we simply transform a web story into an Instagram story. And that can be a very powerful way to share your content to a completely even newer audience and younger audience and transform that content that way. Now, these were examples of how we use social media to push out information. But of course, the main essence of social media is to engage. We try to engage our audience on a daily basis simply by the way we draft our messaging. So we would draft, did you know, or what do you think, or share your thoughts. That's an engaging way to communicate with your audience and to have that two-way dialogue instead of just one pushing out information. Another way to engage your audience is to use opportunities such as trending hashtags. It doesn't happen very often that a trending hashtag is relevant to your topic, but when it is, it can be really powerful to tap into an existing audience. Here's an example from when the hashtag #HowToSpotAFeminist was trending on Twitter in the US in a very negative way. So we thought, how can we turn this around and make this into something positive? And so we selected a quote from our Goodwill ambassador, Emma Watson, and it really went not only all over social media, but also other online media and traditional media who noticed that it was a very negative conversation until the real feminist, quote unquote, stepped in and tapped into that conversation. Another way to engage your audience is at live events. This is an example from the International Day to End Violence Against Women, when we invited our online audience to ask questions to the panelists in advance, either through Twitter or through Facebook. We would then be there and direct the questions to the panelists at the event who responded, and the audience was able to listen to the responses to their questions either through live tweeting or through the live webcast. Now, almost everything we do is related to advocacy, but one example of, you know, one of our most successful advocacy campaigns was an ad campaign called Women Should, and it played on the autocomplete function of Google, where you would type in and it auto-completes. When you type in women should, it auto-completed as stay in the kitchen or be slaves. And this was very simple, but it was an idea from a pro bono agency. But it went really all over, not only social media, but it was at conferences, universities, schools, on TV, and it won awards as well. So that's a powerful example of using social media for advocacy. Now, the Unite to End Violence Against Women campaign and its Orange the World initiative is an example of bringing together all of those three elements that I just outlined, using social media as an additional channel of information, use it for engagement and for advocacy. So the Orange the World we run every year in November between the International Day to End Violence Against Women and December 10th, which are the 16 days of activism. And I'm sure many of you participate in the campaign. So we use that umbrella for all three purposes: to share information, to push out content, to engage our audience, and to use it for advocacy. Now, these were examples of how we as UN Women use social media. Now, a few minutes on how you can use social media for your organizations and what are best practices. As a UN Trust Fund grantee, of course, the basics are you should follow us at UN Trust Fund EWA. I hope you all do. And whenever you post, make sure to tag the UN Trust Fund whenever you post about a project-related update, that is. The mention UN Trust Fund EWA and or the hashtag UNTF. And if you do that, it will notify us and the Trust Fund will be able to amplify your updates. And of course, don't forget to send your photos, stories, and videos with credit, caption, and consent, always keeping in mind also the ethical concerns with working with women survivors of violence. Now, why should you use social media if you can? One, to reach, again, a different audience, especially youth, to increase your visibility and ultimately, hopefully, to attract and support resource mobilization. And three, for advocacy and public awareness. But if you don't have accounts yet, don't rush into it, because you really should think it through. It takes a lot to maintain and sustain accounts. And, depending on the size of your organization, we recommend about 2 to 4 tweets per day if you can, and 1 Facebook post per day, per page. And for Facebook specifically, there is a good reason why that should be, and that's related to the Facebook algorithm, which we'll go into a bit later. So it does take a lot of time and work to research content on the topic, not just communicate about your work, but also about ending violence against women and girls in general. Then check out if your partners have a social media presence, connect with them and cross-promote. Make sure you use the right hashtag, so that takes time to research the right hashtags and use them accordingly. And of course, monitor and respond to users. So for that, the organization really should not underestimate what it takes and ensure dedicated staff and sustainability for that. Now, if you want to use social media, this might help you to think it through, to plan for that kind of sustainability. So what is the objective? What do you want to achieve with it? What content do you want to focus on? What are the key messages? Who's your target audience? Do you really have the staff capacity to ensure what channels are best suited depending on those objectives and the audience? So not just saying, oh, I want to be on Snapchat, but does it really make sense for your objectives and audience? Probably not. And then for us, we always recommend putting that down into a very simple strategy or plan. It can be just 2 pages that outlines those different points. So if you're wondering what platform is the right one for you, I wrote down some basics. I mean, this is not comprehensive, but just an indication of what the strengths are of each platform. So Twitter, in my view, is best for donor outreach in most countries. Again, not every country, but in most. And best for connecting with an engaged audience and sharing short updates and news. Whereas Facebook is good for success stories and videos, but because of the Facebook algorithm, again, we'll explain in a bit, it might work against you if you're on the smaller side and if you don't have the capacity to post very often. It might not have the same reach. Instagram is completely different in the sense that, oh, someone connected. Instagram is completely different in the sense that you really need beautiful, high-quality images on a daily or weekly basis. And because Instagram is all about beautiful images, that's why people come there. And Instagram stories work well, but they do take a lot of effort. Snapchat is similar to Instagram stories, well, or the other way around. Instagram stories is really copied from Snapchat. But the advantage of Instagram is that there was already a big audience before they started stories, whereas Snapchat, for organizations, it's still a very small audience and it might not be worth it. LinkedIn is great for professional networking, for recruitment and donor intelligence. Google Plus, I really don't recommend it. It's kind of dead, and it's only kept alive because it's Google, and it's good to have a presence just for the to be highly ranked up in the search on Google, but it's not something you should invest in. And equally with Pinterest, it's probably not relevant for your purposes. It's really more for where people go to research how their wedding cake should be or their wedding dress. Now, some best practices for Twitter. It was recently changed from 140 to 280 character limit, which is good and bad. We really try to still keep it very short. We don't want to go up to 280 characters because it gets too much in the feed, and the shorter really the better for people to engage with your content. If the partner or person or organization that you mention in a tweet has a Twitter account, make sure to include their Twitter handle. If you're posting any external content from a different organization or an external article, we recommend adding the source at the end as a via add and then a username or v-add username to give credit to the source and to give your audience a chance to get more information there and to show the source that you're using their content. Now for us, the ideal tweet looks like the following. There's the text of the tweet, and then any username mentions of partners or hashtags of relevance, a shortened link, and then at the end, via add the username of the source. and any relevant hashtags. If you have an image you can upload, then we encourage that, but only if you own the rights to use the image. So if it's from your own program, of course, or if you have any specific permission by a partner, or if it's freely available, for example, UN images, UN photos are freely available with credit, then you're welcome to. Otherwise, you're not allowed to just download a photo from the internet and re-upload that. When we live tweet from events, we would quote the speaker and then use the username of the speaker and event hashtag for that tweet. In order to grow your audience, I recommend including your Twitter handle in your email signature and your business card to link online and offline products. And again, try to be part of existing conversations to gain followers and to promote your own content like I've shown before. Hashtags. So you want to tap into existing hashtags to increase reach, to reach an audience that is already interested in that topic and is using a specific hashtag. Or if you have a big campaign or event yourself, then you want to create a unique new hashtag. And that should really be a hashtag that hasn't been used yet, so there are no other conversations meddling in that stream. And you also need a unique hashtag in order to have accurate analytics afterwards of how many people have engaged and used it and participated in the campaign. Always, if you participate in a campaign or event, make sure you use the official hashtag and check with the organizers. And yeah, don't overdo it. You know, we don't want to have tweets that have 10 hashtags in it. It just becomes not readable anymore, and that's bad practice. For us, hashtags that we use a lot, depending on different times of the year. Of course, in November is Orange the World, 16 days. Now, with International Women's Day in March, it's IWD 2018. Planet 50/50 is always relevant to us, and global goals. And then in March is also CSW. These are just some examples. Video. Now, video has become big on pretty much all social media platforms, including Twitter. There is a 140-second limit for most of you. Some have special access for 10 minutes, but mobile is 140 seconds regardless. You can now also publish video on desktop and use Twitter Live, which is similar to Facebook Live. It used to be Periscope and is now integrated into Twitter, where you can live broadcast from anywhere, events, or from your projects. I'm often being asked what makes a tweet successful, so of course there's no clear recipe for that, but in general, in my view, successful posts are, or a post is more likely to be successful if they're visual, timely, and personal. So visual is obvious, you know, to have some kind of image or video attached to it. Timely, that means that it's part of an existing conversation, so it could be a trending topic and anything in the news. It could be an international day, etc. And personal, that can be very broad and differently understood, but that it speaks somehow to the user, that it gets them, it grabs their attention in a personal way. And then it's really about the relevant message, the right audience, and not to forget the right time that you get maximum engagement. And don't be discouraged if you have a small account. It can still be powerful through what we call the multiplier effect or the snowball effect. So for example, if you post a tweet to your followers and if it's related to your UN Trust Fund grant, and you mention a trust fund, for example, the trust fund could pick it up and spread it to their followers. So that's the multiplier effect you can get. Or with UN Women or another UN account could spread your message, or a completely different organization. So even if you think, oh, you don't have that many followers, it can always travel further through that multiplier effect. Now that was more for Twitter. For Facebook, equally select a good quality visual if you can. If you're posting an article, you can also use the thumbnail, which is the image that pops up when you post the URL. Then draft your message in the most engaging way possible, or effect. It's good practice to shorten your link to the article on Facebook as well. And when you mention a different organization or partner or even a celebrity, then link to their Facebook page by typing @ and then the name of their page. The page name pops up, you can select it, and that will increase your reach as well. And again, don't upload any photos to which you don't have the rights. If you do have the rights to use them, then please add the photo credit as well. And again, try to be as visual as possible, including through video. So video on Facebook has really become one of the types of content that works the best. Don't try not to link to a YouTube video, because YouTube is owned by Google, and that's a competitor to Facebook. And Facebook has its own native video feature, so try to upload your own videos that you own directly on Facebook. So now finally, what is the Facebook algorithm? The Facebook algorithm basically determines that about 4 to 5% of your audience only sees a post in their newsfeed, which can sound really depressing, and it is to all of us, but Facebook really wants you to pay in order to increase that percentage. And nobody knows what plays into the algorithm and what can make you rank higher, but there are certain recommendations that show that a mix of content is good, that mentioning other pages is favorable, tapping again into trending topics and existing conversations, and unfortunately also engagement in the past, which can be sort of a vicious cycle and where bigger pages have an advantage. So if you only post once a week, Facebook punishes you and makes your posts visible to even fewer people. One key element for the Facebook algorithm at the moment, but it can change any day, is Facebook Live. So that's really what Facebook is trying to push. And whenever we post to Facebook Live, it has the best reach. And of course, you can't do that every day, but if you have a big event or a campaign or occasion or launch, try to include a Facebook Live, because that's how at the moment on Facebook you can have the biggest reach. Whenever we have a campaign, we create a social media package. So I highly recommend that to you when you want to engage others in sharing your content, to pre-draft messages for them to make it easy. So we would draft tweets, sample tweets, and sample Facebook posts, and prepare all the visual assets and put them in, it could be just a folder, a Dropbox folder, and share all of that with partners, asking them to please spread the message. And that can be very powerful, again, to have that snowball effect. A few tips on tools. For publishing, for scheduling, we use Hootsuite. The almost identical alternative is TweetDeck. So Hootsuite allows us to schedule tweets in advance, which comes in really handy, so we don't have to work 24/7 on posting tweets. It also allows us to have a workflow where one person can have just drafting rights, for example, an intern, and then others can review and approve content. So I highly recommend that. Why is it important to not just publish, but also to monitor and to get analytics? Well, you want to listen to your audience, to respond to questions and comments, and to measure the success of your outreach and learn what works and what doesn't work. And in order to do that, for specific campaigns where we use hashtags, we use hash tracking. Tweet reach is almost the same, and both tools give you numbers on how many people have used the hashtag in how many tweets and how many people were reached. So that's specifically for hashtags. For all the rest on Twitter, by now Twitter Analytics is really good, and you don't really need any other tools but Twitter Analytics, and that's free for everyone on Twitter. For Facebook, there's really nothing else but Facebook Insights that gives you anything more, because Facebook is restricted with the information they give to third-party tools. So for Facebook, really go into the insights, and you will get all the information you need there. Then a few tips on how to be safe and secure on social media. Given the difficult landscape is out there, and also social media being used not for good but for other purposes. So definitely use a strong password for each platform. Always have a backup person who can step in if your account is compromised. Be sure to have strong antivirus and spyware protection on your computer to get an extra layer of protection against hackers. If you use a network like Twitter where your location is tracked or can be tracked, make sure that functionality is off. Don't ever post your address or your phone number or even email address on social networks. And be careful with any third-party applications. Make sure to read their terms and conditions first. In terms of content, be aware that what happens online stays online forever. So even if you delete something, it can already have been screenshotted or shared before. So really only post what you feel 100% comfortable with, as not just yourself, but for your organization. So of course, as the UN, we have very clear restrictions. You might have other limitations, so just be aware of that. And it's good practice for that, but also for other, other human mistakes, to have another set of eye look over the content before it gets posted. When you engage with your audience, there's a fine line. You should definitely hide comments that include hate speech and completely unacceptable, and report them to Facebook, for example, or Twitter even. You cannot hide the comments on Twitter, but you can still report the user. If it's just something negative about your organization, then you can't. You don't want to censor them. But if it's hate speech, then that's, at least for us, it's part of our disclaimer that we don't accept that. And if it's just spammers, then you can hide them on Facebook, and on Twitter there's unfortunately not much you can do, but you shouldn't engage with them. There's some ways on Facebook where you can block some keywords to decrease spamming. Now, these were some general best practices and on how you can use social media. Let's have a look at some of your posts from some of you to highlight some really good practices. Quick recap. So what's a good tweet? It's brief, it's timely, it has a call to action maybe, it provides a link for more detail, it has high quality content, so visuals whenever possible. Pay attention to, you know, only shorten words when necessary while still keeping it brief, avoiding acronyms, try to shorten links, use the right hashtags correctly, and another point, don't start a tweet with an @username, because then on Twitter, because Twitter thinks that that tweet is only directed to that user. So if you want to start a tweet with a username, good practice is to put a period in front of it to trick Twitter. So some examples here. On the left, that's a very engaging and personal visual asset. It's very clear and brief. The link is shortened. One thing that could have been added would be a hashtag to tap into the audience that is already discussing that topic. But it looks really great. Then on the right, also a great tweet. The image is slightly cut off, so I would recommend editing your visuals into Twitter size, which is 506 by 253 at the moment, to make it stand out even better. And for the hashtags, make sure to always research what the best hashtag to use is, and if it already exists. For example, in this case, the World Health Organization uses the hashtag Let's Talk for their campaign on depression. So it doesn't. There could be other hashtags that fit the topic better here. And again, on the left is a quote, from a program in Tanzania, and that's great that it's a personal story, and even at the end, a donor account is mentioned, so that's a great way to attract attention from the donor. On the right, again, a great tweet. It shows followers 5 ways to take action. It mentions Twitter handles of partners at the end to get their attention, and it's very timely, for the end of the year. It's an article from the Huffington Post, so what could have been added would be at the end the Twitter handle of the source to give credit and to, increase engagement as well. On the left, an example of a very engaging video with a clear and brief tweet. I would recommend limiting the hashtags to just a few for it to just be better readable. And if possible, you can also try to add a link to drive traffic to your website to make the link between the tweet and the website. On the right, a very timely tweet. It was for the holiday season. A great social media card image in a short and clear tweet. And at the end, as you can see, a shortened action link. Now on the left, again, very timely for the holiday season, and a great tweet with, a personal tone that really speaks to the user. And on the right, a really great visual that shows your work, and the message really shows your impact as well. And very well done mentioning partners and donors in the tweets to show that that you're appreciating their support. Now on the left, that organization created their own social media campaign with their own hashtag, so that's great. And endorse the campaign with visuals and consistent brandings throughout, including this video. In the middle, that's a great use of existing hashtags and tapping into existing hashtags, like Sunday Read. That's not necessarily related to your work, but it's a hashtag that is commonly used, and you can tap into that conversation. And on the right, similarly, Monday motivation is always a big hashtag on Mondays, and to tap into that conversation will draw engagement. It's always great to give some love to your followers and thank them. And of course, the holiday season is a great opportunity for that. And then if you create a nice visual like here, it has even bigger impact. And on the right, if your organization's lead has a personal Twitter account, it's always great practice to retweet those senior officials. Not all of your directors have accounts, but if they do, make sure to interact with them, to retweet them on Twitter as well. And of course, as I mentioned at the beginning, mentioning the UN Trust Fund is great practice if it's related to your grant and the project. So you can do that even by retweeting the trust fund or quoting the trust fund. So quote tweet means instead of a simple retweet, you add your comment at the top, as you see here on the left in both examples. So it's a retweet with your own comment at the top. And on the bottom right, that's great messaging that really urges your audience to take action. Now, these were some examples from Twitter. Let's recap on Facebook. Again, similarly, we want to be timely, brief, actionable, share visuals whenever possible, have a consistent voice, and a personal, engaging tone. What to pay attention to? As opposed to Twitter, on Facebook you can hide comments when there is hate speech. Try to post videos and caption them. That's a good practice because a lot of users watch videos or social media content in general in their news feed without the sound on. So when the videos are captioned, they can read them more easily than just watching. And Facebook Lives are great. Don't ask for shares and likes, etc. That's a recent change that came out of Facebook, that the algorithm now disfavors you if you write your post in the way "please share" or "please like." That's not good practice anymore. And you can experiment with geo-targeting, what I haven't mentioned yet. So on Facebook, the advantage is that you can select specific cities or countries or languages where the post should show up. So that's a really great advantage of Facebook over Twitter. A few examples from all of you. So this is a great Facebook post that is timely, has a great connection to the audience. It's an external article but has a clear link, in messaging. One suggestion would be to, but that's, very minor detail, to tag the source at the end of the post, because it comes from Reuters, to, to give credit to that. On the left here, you see a great example of engagement that, this organization really takes the time to answer comments and post links to more information. It's also a great example on the right for engagement to ask questions, which I mentioned at the beginning. What do you think of this? Did you know, etc. And to have that personal tone in your posts. This was in Portuguese, but it's a very good example of having your own social media card. It's actionable, it's timely, and as you can see at the very top in this little pin, it's pinned to the top of your Facebook page, which because it's still relevant and important. So that's a feature that you can use to highlight a specific post. Just one thing would be to maybe try to make it a little shorter, because longer posts get cut off, and Facebook favors generally shorter updates. But there's no recipe for that. Sometimes longer posts are great as well. This Facebook post was great for an event promotion, and it took photos and transformed them into video, and it showed consistent branding throughout their post, which was great. And on the right, again, a continuous and consistent social media campaign with a very social media friendly visual with clear and brief messaging. It's very informative and action oriented. The example on the left is an example of sharing your own posts. What does that mean? Well, you have a Facebook post, and then a few days, a few weeks, a few months later, instead of re-uploading the same content, you can actually share your own post. Especially if it's a video, it makes sense to not re-upload it, but to share the original post. And you can add, some context and a different caption at the top. And that's great, and all video views then count together to the original post. On the right, that's an example of posting in 2 languages, which might make sense for many of you. Of course, it becomes longer then, but sometimes it really makes sense. It's a great use of visuals here and clear messaging. Maybe a link would be helpful for more information, but if it's not available, then it's great as it is as well. This is an example of showing how followers have helped the organization, and to thank them for their support, to show the impact, with a great visual. Again, this is a video, so highly recommend captioning video because most people watch it with the sound off on their mobiles. This is a great example of a post that includes several images in one post. And it's very timely because it links to an international day. So it taps into that existing conversation. Here again, the multiple images are great. If it makes sense, not for every post, but here that's really nice. And of course, mentioning the trust fund is great. And one thing to keep in mind is acronyms might not be understood by the general public, so try to limit them, minimize them. And when you mention the trust fund, what you can do instead of writing UN Trust Fund and then linking to the Facebook page, you would type @UN Trust Fund, and then the page name will pop up, and when you click on it, you can just select that, and it creates a nice link already there. Here, a great example of, again, 2 languages and mentioning a donor here. If the donor has a Facebook page as well, it's great to, again, mention their page and link to their page. But beautiful images and visuals in a multiple photo post. These were some examples, but I think all of you are doing already a great job, and the social media landscape is changing every day, so we all have to constantly adapt and and adjust and try to have the best possible impact. Now, lastly, we wanted to address using social media for fundraising, because I'm sure many of you are under the pressure to fundraise, and we wanted to discuss how social media can be helpful for that. Well, first of all, you need a fundraising site, of course. But there's also the option to use Facebook donations. And then how do you promote? Well, through email marketing and social media activation. So we'll go through those 3 steps as the last points of this webinar. If you have your own fundraising site, this is a nice example. The backend, of course, needs to be set up for effective fundraising. You want to have good copy on there, great content explaining how a donation makes a real difference. But then really the backend needs to work. If you lose people there when they make the payment, that would be a shame. If you don't have the capacity to set up your own backend payment system, it's really great to use one of the established and reputable third-party fundraising sites. I'm not endorsing them, just giving some examples such as Kickstarter, Indiegogo, and GoFundMe, because they're the biggest. So you would set up your fundraising campaign, then share it on social media, accept donations directly on the page, and then thank your donors and get data on your donors. That's one way. Now, Facebook in recent years has really made it easy for nonprofits to accept donations as well, right on Facebook, which is great. And there are different ways. So there's a donate button that is right on your Facebook page that you can either link out to your own fundraising site or have the system set up within Facebook. If you want to accept donations through Facebook, you need to create an account for Facebook payments. And if you're a nonprofit, then there's no fee for that. So go to Facebook nonprofits, Facebook donate, you can set that up. There's a minimum donation payout amount that depends, but the payout is usually on a biweekly basis. Again, the donations can also be linked to your own website payment processor, but if you're on Facebook and accepting it through there, then that's easy enough. Once a donation is made, your supporter can share it on their personal page and encourage others to do the same. There are also so-called Facebook fundraisers. It basically gives people the tool to fundraise for you, to get the word out. Even anyone can create a fundraiser, quote unquote, to raise funds for your organization, if you're registered on Facebook and raise money for your nonprofit. They can set up a page and share their story and tell others about your mission. So it's really very, user generated. They can share that on Facebook, on Messenger, on live video, and through email. The way it works is your friends, supporters can donate in a few tabs directly, from posts without leaving Facebook. So that's a very easy way to collect donations. And as I mentioned, every time someone donates, they're asked to share and invite their friends. And then those shares also have that donate button where people can donate right from the news feed. Facebook Live, again, is a great way to add a donation call as well. So when you are doing a Facebook Live, giving an inside look into your organization, you can collect donations right there as well during the Facebook Live. That can be a powerful way to raise awareness and to connect instantly with people, to take advantage, quote unquote, of when they see your impact in a live video, to immediately have the opportunity to donate as well. So in a nutshell, the pros of Facebook donation is that the ability to share your donation with Facebook friends can be great to boost your cause. People can donate, without leaving Facebook right there. There's no fees for nonprofits, and you can see, who has donated to you. The one negative is that the donor needs to click past the warning message that Facebook does not endorse the nonprofit, which of course makes sense and Facebook has to do, so that's just one hurdle. And of course, you're still restricted by the Facebook algorithm, and you're giving the control over the whole process and payment system to Facebook as a company. Now, whatever you decide to do or how you fundraise, you do not want to neglect email marketing and underestimate the power of email. It's still the most effective way to fundraise today, despite all the different tools out there. It's really, a great way to increase the number of donations. And there are a lot of statistics that say that nonprofits who use email marketing see a higher engagement, specifically with key supporters. So it's still the most effective way to engage a very particular, key supporter audience that is very engaged and can be very generous. So you'll raise more money through targeted fundraising through emails. You have the chance to engage your audience with frequent and personal contact. There are some email tools out there where you can really personalize your emails, as you can see here. And you can receive real-time feedback, which is similar to social media, but it's a little more personal in email as well. Then social media, you definitely want to use social media to promote your fundraisers. You can create a unique hashtag that supports the fundraising campaign. Then very important, create really nice visual assets and brand them in a consistent way that you use for all the posts related to fundraising, whether it's a video or images. Those high quality assets will really, help communicate the power of your work. And make sure to highlight ways in which your audience can make a difference. put a time frame to the campaign. That helps. Not just open-ended fundraising, but if you give people a time frame, they're more likely to give. Give shout-outs to fantastic contributions and donors. Try to find influencers in your country, your region, who can help you get more support. So if it doesn't have to be a huge celebrity, it could be an influencer in other ways that might have a very engaged and influential audience themselves that can spread the word and gather support. Again, try to make sure you thank your followers and give feedback and show impact of the donations. So just a few examples to wrap it up. Here on the left, a great example of social media for fundraising with consistent branding throughout posts that ask for donations, and a nice link to the holiday season. As well, here the nice link to the holiday season, which of course is a big fundraising time. And instead of saying, just please donate, this wording offers the audience an opportunity to make a change in a different way. And lastly, just another set of great visuals from one organization that looks consistent in its branding and its visual identity and great messaging for fundraising. Okay, and that's it for this webinar. Here are all the accounts from UN Women, with, of course, most importantly, the UN Trust Fund accounts. We also have, dozens of country and regional Facebook pages and Twitter accounts that you might connect with depending on your country. And we look forward to your questions now. I'm going to feel free to unmute yourself if you have a question, or you can type them in the chat. Any questions?
Hello?
Yes?
Oh, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Okay. Which is preferred when using pictures? Do I want to show the real situation? For example, if we want to raise funds for Syrian refugees, would I want to? Okay. My name is Sarah Kobalan. I'm from Palestine. I work at an all-women organization, NGO, under the name of Mother School Society. And my question is, which is preferred? If you want to raise funds or raise donations through pictures, obviously when you want to post a post through Twitter or Facebook, you are gonna enclose or attach a photo. Which is preferred? Let's say if we want to raise funds for Syrian refugees, would I want to use a picture that is very I don't know how to say it, but to be like
depressing?
Yeah, like a simple picture, or do I want everyone to know like the situation in Syria? Like, you know what I mean? Because some people may want to donate out of sympathy, or that picture might move something in them, but still it might be like you're using the emotions of the people who are seeing that picture. Which is preferred?
Yes, that's an excellent question. And for us at the UN, we have a very clear policy to only show empowering visuals. For nonprofits, I know there is a tendency sometimes to play on the emotions of people, and that works well. it does in you know in many different settings,
Mhm.
but still I highly recommend not to focus on the depressing and disempowering side, but highlight how your work can have an impact, a positive impact, and show that empowering aspect visually in your images. So try to create visuals that show your work in an empowering way. So how those women are, how their lives have been changed and transformed, how the lives of their communities have been transformed through your work, to show that positive, the positive example rather than a disempowering side of women's lives. That's always our policy. But I know playing on emotions for fundraising works well for some organizations as well.
Okay. Thank you very much. That was very helpful.
Um, so Farine is saying, I would add to be careful if you're sending a message from a country in which you're being tracked by the government, then be very careful about the message you send. Yes, of course, that's very important, to know your context and environment. Any other questions?
Can you explain again about the GoFundMe or the Indiegogo, the websites that you have mentioned?
Yes. What would you like me to explain? How they work, or?
Okay, so like I've heard about those websites that you can fundraise or raise funds through those websites, but I have never used them. Like, am I going to enter the website and try to raise funds or post something that'll, like, what is the process there? Just a brief.
Yes.
Yeah.
So again, it's absolutely no endorsement from our side, and actually, as the UN, we're not allowed to use any of these third-party tools. But I mention them because I think they're very simple tools you could explore if they make sense for your organization, if they're in line with your policy and legal status. So the way it works is you just create a profile and have your profile picture, the name of your page, and or of your fundraising call. And then very important is really the copy, meaning the text you use to attract the audience. And that has to be written in a, again, very engaging, empowering way, showing in a short, concise way the impact of your work. So you have space for that text. And then you just enter your, the payment information, your account, how the payment should be channeled through, and users can simply donate by credit card, I believe, and then it goes to you. So it's very simple. And of course, be careful with any country limitations. And I'm not endorsing any products, but it's just an option for you to explore. And yes, Farine added that most of those platforms have nonprofit features where there's no fee attached to it, or they don't take a profit. Some of them take a certain percentage of the money raised from for-profits, but most of them, double check for sure, but most of them don't take any fee or percentage of the funds raised if you're a nonprofit. Then Rita is asking, how often can we retweet in a week? What is a good frequency? Good question. So it really depends on the size of your organization. For us, it's about, from the global account, about 12 times a day. But I know it's not unrealistic it's not realistic for most of you. So for Twitter, the frequency is generally higher than Facebook because the updates are shorter and quicker. So I would recommend tweeting, every day. If you can, then at least like 5 times a week. I would say at least in order to build and maintain your audience. But it can be as often as several times per day. Then a question from YWCA Belarus. We have one question considering mentioning donors. Is it the best option to mention UN Trust Fund EWA or UN Trust Fund EWA together with UN Women? No, UN Trust Fund EWA is fine. It's great to mention on Twitter, and then on Facebook it's UN Trust Fund, tagging the page. That's that's your main contact, and that's who where you have the grant from, and it's an interagency mechanism. So it's not just UN Women. It's managed by UN Women on behalf of the UN system. So it's an interagency fund. So definitely mention the UN Trust Fund to End Violence Against Women on those accounts. Of course, if there's anything specific that you want UN Women's attention as well, feel free to mention us. But yeah, Trust Fund is definitely your priority. Question from Sarah, when the presentation can be available. It will be available right away today. We can share the link with you of the recorded video. Question from Sejuti from Pragya, India. Is it useful to focus efforts and build followers and shares through platforms where we already have some presence, so Facebook and Twitter, or try and expand to newer platforms, for example, Instagram, where we have less capacity and don't have a large following? Excellent question. So I always recommend not to spread yourself too thin, but be aware of your capacities and limitations, and really, try to focus all your efforts and capacities that you have and the limited time that you have on a limited number of networks. So if you already have Facebook and Twitter, I would say that's plenty, and really focus on building up that audience and mostly producing high quality content about your work. Instagram is very particular. It's so visual. You need really beautiful images on a weekly, if not daily basis, and it can be very hard to maintain that. And if you only have a few followers, then it's really not worth it. So don't spread yourself too thin. If you don't have any accounts, definitely start with only one account first and try that out and build that out. If you already have to, I would say really focus your efforts on producing high quality content for those. Luis is asking, when we're trying to populate an account and we had a tweet with a good reach, should we retweet it or make it a new post? Whoa, very specific question. I like it. There are advantages for either. So the question is basically, since last year, Facebook allows you to retweet your own tweet instead of retweeting only others. So say you have a tweet that is already very successful, you can retweet it and it basically shows up at the top again and it goes out to your followers again. Or you can, of course, repost it again. So let me break it down into two responses. If you have Twitter Studio, which some of you might, it's where you can post videos and images directly. It's called studio.twitter.com. If you don't have access, you can request access through Twitter. Then your video is already, and if you want to post a video, your video gets uploaded through the studio, and then you can reshare it from there, and it still counts towards the same video views. So in that case, I would definitely post it as a new post and just share the video from the studio. If it's a normal, if you don't have access to Studio Library, and B, if it's a visual or not a video, you can definitely retweet it to try to increase the reach again. And it helps, to get a really high number if you're looking for that on that one post. We personally would probably repost it either way, just to have a fresh post and to make it look like fresh content. Because obviously if you retweet it, it looks already like an older post. That's a disadvantage as well. So I don't think it's cut and dry. You can try both. We mostly repost the same content again. Suhaib, can we link them all with one email address? You probably mean all your social media accounts. Yeah, sure, but I highly recommend using different passwords for sure, so that in the unfortunate, unlikely event that one gets hacked, and then the other one is hopefully still protected. But yes, you can use the same email address for them. Hasnain, any suggestion on how to integrate different social media platforms? Integrate them. If you mean for publishing, then I would highly recommend Hootsuite. That's where we integrate all our, Twitter accounts, even Facebook pages. We can give access to different, users to draft content. That's a great way to integrate all the accounts into a management tool. If you mean integrating more in a content way, then I definitely recommend producing, one type of content for the different platforms. So if you have a story, you can post it on your website. You can create a nice visual out of it, maybe a quote card, and you can create it to the right size for Twitter, for Facebook, and for other platforms as well. So always try to integrate, your content on the different platforms. Suhaib, can we link Facebook and Instagram and Twitter to Unite posts? Oh, I think I know what you mean. If you should link the platform so that when you post on one platform, it shows up on the other. No, absolutely not recommended. I know that would save you some time, but all the platforms require a completely different content approach, and it's really bad practice to, for example, when you post a tweet, for it then automatically the tweet to show up on Facebook, and to link it that way. It's not good, because the Facebook post requires different kind of content structure and format. So don't link your Facebook and Twitter or Instagram accounts for automatic cross-posting. Then, Sarah, will the donate button show up automatically when you're creating a page for donating on Facebook, or do you have to ask for the button, and do you have to be an NGO to ask for it? So every Facebook page that was created under the label of nonprofit automatically has the ability to have a donate button. You can also, if you set up your Facebook page incorrectly initially, don't worry, you can still change it in the settings. You can, at the very top, by your name, under settings, you can select the category of your page. There are different categories like business or bank or whatever, and then one option is nonprofit organization. So if you select that, at the very top on your cover image, there's then the option, there's a button, and you can, that button also has different options. So it could just link to your website, or it could ask people to share something, or you can change it to donate. So that's definitely possible. Gabrielle from Alliance for Africa, Nigeria. Is it a good idea to link social media platforms so that one post for Twitter, for instance, can also appear on our Facebook page? Oh, I think I just responded to that. So, no, I'm sorry. That's not good practice to automatically have posts go from one platform to the other. Sejuti, we mostly take help from our communication experts who use Photoshop, Illustrator, etc. Can you suggest some platforms where we can easily create GIFs, edit short videos, and overlay pictures with messages, etc.? Then more of our team members can contribute to the posts easily. Yes, absolutely, and I wish I had had time to include that element in the webinar. It would take a bit longer to show you those different tools, but our favorite tool for simple visualization right now is Canva, canva.com. Again, I'm not allowed to endorse it, but I'm just telling you what we use, and it's so simple and amazing what you can do with it to overlay text on images, and create GIFs. We use Photoshop also to create GIFs, but in terms of free accessible tool, really try Canva. It's right now I think it's one of the best out there. For short videos, my favorite tool is called Spark. It's Adobe, but it's free, and in the there's a simple free version. So Spark, SPARK, and again, super simple tool to create a very simple video based on images and text that can be very impactful, and we've had great results with that. So these are two tools I highly recommend: Canva, CANVA, and Spark. Pragya, India, can you suggest a good platform for hosting photo essays? Probably Medium is what we like most for photo essays, but again, it would require creating a presence there, and it really only makes sense if you have the capacity to have regular posts on Medium. Otherwise, it might not be worth it. But if you want to create a photo essay and try that platform, you can still then promote it on social media and link back there. That's nice. Otherwise, if you have a website, of course, hopefully your website itself also has the functionality for a nice layout, and it might be more beneficial to just drive all the traffic to your website instead of creating a new presence on an outside platform. Sarah's asking if we're going to post the questions with the answers. Well, hopefully the video recording will have the Q&A included as well. So hopefully you can hear it there, because I read them out and then I responded. But let me quickly write the tools I recommended. So that's Canva.com and Spark. So you have them here. Okay, just looking through the chats. Thank you for all your messages there. Let's see if there's one last question. From Suhaib, I'm having a campaign every year and I have a name for it. Do you think it's good to use a name for it every year? A new name for it every year. So, yeah, great question again. I think there is definitely value in having the same campaign name every year. For example, for us, it's as part of the Unite to End Violence Against Women campaign. we have Orange the World that we've been using for the last few years, and I think it really has helped us to build a momentum and to build a recognition of it, so that every year more countries and more people around the world participate because they already recognize it. A new campaign, then you always have to, you might need a new visual identity. You have to build that brand recognition again. So I don't know the specifics of your case, but I think there's definitely value in having the same name each year if it's a recurring campaign that takes place every year, if it's around the same topic, that is. Sarah, are you going to have similar webinars in the near future? Well, I'm glad you liked it. We'll have the same webinar also in French and Spanish, and then we'll have the recorded video, if you want to refresh your memory and for those who couldn't participate. And then I'm sure we can organize another one in the future as a refresher as well with updated content. Thanks for all the nice messages in the chats. And of course, besides the social media webinar, there will be there are plenty of other webinars organized by the UN Trust Fund on other topics as well. So that's it. Thank you very much for joining. And again, this video will be available as an archived recording. And thanks for joining from near and far. And all the best for all your social media work. Bye.